Hi, I'm Alex Parsons. I'm a senior researcher at mySociety. So following on from the keynote, we're going to have a panel discussion thinking about that intersection of tech and democracy. We've obviously got a room full of technologists today, and I think one of the key questions to TICTeC is how do we ensure that tech works to defend and build the kind of world we want to live in. So on this panel, and yes, on the screen, we have different perspectives on this problem. So we have Silvana Fumega, Director of the Global Data Barometer. We've got on the screen Mike Bracken, who is currently Public Digital, founder and executive, but was previously founder and executive director of the UK Government Digital Service. We've got Ya-wei Chou, Program Manager of Innovation at FNF Global Innovation Hub Taipei, and Felix Sieker, the Program Manager for Digitization at Bertelsmann Stiftung. So that is our panel today. So we're going to spend half an hour sort of talking through the issues from the keynote and sort of, tech and democracy. It's all good. So my first question to the panel, and I'll start with Silvana, is, so you all do works in lots of different contexts. What are the challenges and problems you're seeing where tech and democracy meet?
I had so many things written that I'm not sure where to start. But first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's really nice to be here, and it's really difficult to follow that intervention. There are many things to say, probably as we were talking with Fernanda at the beginning of this morning, none of them were really happy, so sorry about that. But basically what I have to say, just to start with this conversation, is that basically the intervention that we just heard remind us that this is not only a technological transition. What we are talking about is a challenge at the heart of democracy and democratic governance. Some of the things that I'm going to say today and during the day are coming from the results of the second edition of the Global Data Barometer that is covering 43 countries. And all of them coming from Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa. So we are looking at a different kind of place in the world compared to what we just heard. But still, what we are seeing is how data and digital technologies are shaping the future of democracy, but without the proper safeguards to match. In the countries that I mentioned, there are many things that I have to say, and in general, governments are not really ready to manage the impact of AI in our society or the digital transformation in our society. And in that sense, three main points that I'd like to address: that in general, institutional capacity is the missing link between ambition and impact in this transformation, that the shape of our digital infrastructure decides who gets to participate and who gets left out, and also that we need to reclaim data and technology as public goods in a general sense. So when we are talking about digital capacity, basically when, for example, looking at data protection legislation and AI strategies, they are really nice on paper, but in general, from translating that from commitment to action is a different story, and that's where we are missing. Few countries, of the ones that we are covering the 43 that I mentioned in Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa, few of them have mechanisms to monitor algorithm decisions. Also, fewer update the data sharing rules to reflect the realities of AI. Also, public officials in general are not being trained in data literacy or algorithm accountability. So in a general sense, opaque decision-making continues unchecked. And the burden falls, of course, disproportionately on the most vulnerable. In the second point that I made, that is the idea that the shape of our digital infrastructure indicates who gets in and who gets out. It's not about, thinking about if policies exist, but if the systems that we build actually reflects the diversity of our society. So in some senses, some data sets only are, for example, in some of the indicators that we cover in the GDB, that many of the data sets are if they are available only in official languages without covering many other languages that are spoken or written by the majority of people in different countries. Also, that accessibility standards are not always enforced, and in general, when building blocks of data governance exclude, so too will the technologies that are built on top of them. And to finish, because I don't want to take all the time, and maybe we can do a second round thinking about these things, is that we need to reclaim data and technology as public good. There are many examples here, I'm sure, and also around the world about civic tech and also community-driven data, but in many cases they are the exception and not the rule, and that's the problem. So we need to start thinking how to build public capacity, how to encourage cooperation for open, right-respecting infrastructure, and also shifting from extractive models, and that's where many of the places that we are talking about when we talk about Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, as it was mentioned, to data systems that really serve people, especially those historically left out. So we need to shift from actions and narratives and stop responding only when things are done, when the harm is done. I mean, in many cases, we are chasing the harm that is already done, so we need to start thinking how to stop the harm from being done from the start. So I'm going to stop here and looking forward to another round.
Thank you. Yes, Ya-wei, what do you, on the same question, like what do you sort of see the challenges and problems being that you see in your area?
Yeah, I think I observed there's three challenges about this topics. First of all, we are the Friedrich Naumann Foundation's Global Innovation Hub. We really feel that there are actually quite many citizens or democracy advocates. They really feel and experience the problems of how the current technology brings. But still, many people feel that they are sort of lacking the resources of get to know what kind of technology tools they can use or what is the most urgent technology topic that they can start learning from. So that is why we have been trying very hard and putting a lot of resources about building these kind of resources. For example, in tomorrow we will have a workshop. We support the GovZeroV Zhou community to develop a civic tech handbook, which is to help non-technology citizens and coders, engineers, programmers to work together to initiate their own projects for digital democracy or trying to tackle those negative impacts that those big tech companies or the government has bring, and facilitate the participation of the citizen. And the second and third challenges I observe is actually quite the same things. I feel that the current design of technology is sort of meeting or exaggerate the demands of people who have like immediate excitement of emotion or getting a quick, simple, easy solution. For example, maybe you already feel that on social media, it's almost impossible to discuss a public issue rationally, or the setting of the social media is not for you to have a quality discussions or have many rounds of deliberation for ideal solution. It's only for people to have like quick feeling of happiness, encouragement, or resentment. That is not an ideal conversation, public sphere we long for. And the second problem is now the design of technology seems to encourage you to have quick solution. For example, I don't think it's a bad idea to use a ChatGPT or all kinds of generative tool to write the text for social media or for email. I'm not against it. But thinking of, then it certainly become like, who is the one who invent the fast generative AI seems to be the person who can get the crown. For example, people are discussing how China developing DeepSeek, the generative AI tool as well. But people are discussing how advanced the kind of technology is, but without thinking about if you asking DeepSeek what is Tiananmen incident, what have PRC government done to Tibetan or Xinjiang, then you almost got no answer. So it's quick, it's advanced, but it is a kind of technology we are encouraging. So these are the 3 challenges that I have observed.
Thank you. Felix, same questions in your area, like problems and challenges at the sort of intersection of tech and democracy.
Okay, does it work? Yeah. Yeah, maybe to give one concrete example, but first, I think an important point that's often forgotten at the moment is that AI is not only generative AI. AI existed before, and there are many machine learning applications that do not require these large, not everything's transformer-based. And there are many interesting applications, and I think like one area where tech and democracy meet is recommender systems of platforms, which is quite interesting. And at the moment, most of these recommender systems are optimized for engagement, which causes often polarizing content to be shown to users, but that doesn't have to be that way. Like there's a lot of research at the moment on how other content can be shown to users that can really foster productive conflict. And I think that's a real opportunity, but of course, like that's a big challenge for big platforms because they have an ad-based business model and are totally against that. But I think there's some interesting developments, even in the US. Like there's some legislative efforts on the state level in Minnesota, for example, where platform design regulation is getting more attention. But in the EU, for instance, like we are mostly focused on content moderation at the moment. And I think there should be a stronger focus on platform design regulation. For example, in the Digital Services Act, there's one article, Article 25, that can be repurposed for platform design regulation, but so far the debate is not there. But I think if we would focus a bit more on platform design regulation, that could be a good example how tech can be used to foster productive conflicts and make our platforms better.
Thank you. Final question to Mike. Same question again, actually. So what are the sort of challenges and problems you're seeing in your area where tech and democracy are meeting?
Thanks, Alex. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today. I hope you can hear me okay. I work with Public Digital. We work with 40 plus governments around the world, plus multilateral organizations, large funders, World Bank, IMF, so on and so forth. I would contend that technology and democracy aren't really meeting at the moment. To meet, you have to be able to see each other, and they're not doing that. There's a number of reasons for that. Firstly, tech doesn't want to meet. Then big tech doesn't want to meet within the democratic constructs that many of us want to work in. The second issue is there's not enough people in those democratic constructs that understand the technological, many of the technological issues facing us. So the first thing is let's meet on more equal terms. To do that, we have to get more people, possibly who are in your audience today, to be in powerful positions within government. I sort of slightly disagree with Marietta earlier about the sort of influencing politicians where they are. Part of the problem we've had for the last 25 years is politicians being precisely where they are. We've had looking backwards, we've had numerous examples of where quick, quite simple enlightened regulations, thinking about Digital Commerce Act and so on, could have stopped the internet and the web developing in the way that it has done. This was very knowable at the time to a lot of people, and yet didn't cut through politically. So I do think we have a job, not just to educate the political class, but change the political imperative for people in positions of power. And also within our government systems, our non-elected systems, is to have many more people who are even got the basic levels of platform understanding of technologies and how they work. We essentially are living in a pre-internet democracy, trying to regulate regulate within a system which is way out of control. What I would also say is how to do that. Once on an equal playing field, what we should be doing next is thinking about how to work. I don't think supply side fantasies like GovStack are going to get us where we want to go. This is a systemic assault on democratic systems, and like all systemic issues, it requires a systemic response. Regulation and policy are only two of the tools in the bag, and I think it's really important that democratic nations of all types should be adept at creating and delivering democratic digital services and information with tooling and with platforms that are themselves built with democratic values. You're not going to get those by asking Meta to play nicely. You're going to get those by making them. Now, the good news for me is in large parts of the world that don't have sort of G7-like economies, that don't have huge amounts of technical legacy, that's happening naturally. If we look at, say, platforms like Adahar in Brazil, Pix in India, MoSIP, and so on, the world of digital public infrastructure and digital public goods is at the moment the place where we can put in some guardrails to protect democratic movements and to build technological platforms and services that we all need and that uphold democratic values. So I'm much more optimistic about the future. But to really take advantage of that gap, that ability to use sort of DPI as a way forward, our democratic systems, as I say, must be more technologically, not just informed, but essentially we need politicians and government actors who are of the internet, who understand how this stuff works, because we have a huge imbalance really between a small number of big players in the market and the speed of which our democratic systems can respond. So I'll probably leave it there to start the conversation.
So I'm now just going to jump a bit around a set of questions. I'll ask one of the panelists, and if anyone else wants to come in after that, feel free. I guess starting with Felix, like, do AI technologies pose different challenges for control and oversight than other forms of tech?
When it comes to, does it work? Yeah. When it comes to generative AI, yes, I would say definitely. On oversights, it's much harder to audit large-scale models because it's not enough to just have the model parameters. You also need information on the data, and you also need information on how they were trained. Like, for example, how they were fine-tuned on a specific domain. And this knowledge is this is not in the open at the moment. Like, most frontier development is happening within the leading AI labs, and this is like a real big bottleneck, I would say. And on control, deploying and developing AI models is really expensive. So to give you some numbers, if you think about compute, the latest NVIDIA chip, the Blackwell GPU costs around $60,000, and that does not include like the entire the entire cooling architecture you need for a data center, and also not the switches that are necessary to connect the GPUs within the data center. So that's a lot of money, and there's at the moment a proposal in the EU where it wants to build so-called gigafactories, which is basically a public computing infrastructure, so that there can be some models trained in the EU, and that includes the plan is, I think, clusters of 100,000 GPUs. So you can do the math; it's like really expensive. And the 2 data center deals at the moment in Saudi Arabia and the UAE involve even more, like 500 clusters of 500,000 GPUs. And yeah, that does not even include the entire AI talent you need to develop and deploy these models. I think there can be made the argument to do that because, like, at the moment, like, all frontier models are from US and Chinese companies. There is no, like, Mistral is so far behind that there's not really like an alternative. But you have to take in mind that it is expensive and must be strategic. And there's at the moment a bit like it's a bit. I can only talk about the EU. Like, it's a bit of a strategy missing, because we have the Gigafactory proposal. Then we also have like EU AI factories, which already exist, which are supercomputers that are equipped with some GPUs. It's more for general purpose computing. Some can be used to train large language models, others less. But there's 7 of that, and there will be 12 now. And there's like not enough coordination at the moment. So like each member state has their own data center, which is much smaller. And how do you want to develop a large scale model, like if each country is doing it by itself? So like there must be much more coordination and really strategic decision making.
Thank you. Ya-wei, if we want to use tech for democratic purposes, how do we sort of decrease the power of anti-democratic tech in how we run our societies?
I think the very most important idea is every time when we talk about how to reduce the impact of technology for democracy, we face an argument that very often this big tech company or these experts are arguing, like do not let politics intervene the advance of technology. Do not let politics intervene the economic growth. And I think, well, for some reason it is true. We, as a liberal, we are for market competition. We believe that the reason why we believe the competition of free market is because they can bring everybody the best results. But however, this not should be simplified as nobody should, like everyone should not do anything to sustain the operations of a normal market. Which means it's definitely important when a big company, they're developing a sort of new technology, it's definitely important to look more people in the process. It's definitely important to ensure the principle of democracy, protections of data privacy, protection of freedom of speech is well considered and well, it's included in the process of inventing such technology. Why? Because if you rethink the invention of every kind of technology, I don't think anyone can claim that this technology is completely developed by myself. For example, think about ChatGPT, think about all kinds of generative AI tools. The reason why they can be invented, they can be made, is because they use the existing data on the internet. And which means, and also, if there's no freedom of speech, how can we put so many information on the internet? So these examples are clearly shows that these technology tools are developed on the basis of these foundations, which is the very important values that we deeply believe, which is freedom of speech, democracy, rule of law. So every citizen are definitely qualified to argue that in the formation of technology, we are definitely qualified to ask them to ensure that these important values are well considered, are well implemented in the formation of technology.
Thank you, that's great. Question for Mike. Everyone else has managed to pick up the mic. I'm just going to stand it like this. So you talked a bit about how there's multiple ways that governments can do work in this area. I guess the question I have is, how can governments in general help pro-democratic tech succeed, not just by running their own, but by encouraging an ecosystem? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, and there's loads of ways. Firstly, use your own capability and use yourself. Look, have open standards and protocols. They already exist. Things like open air and health, EHR. Militantly impose those standards across the public estate. So, for instance, if you want to check in at a hospital or a public health centre, your record should be held in a public record of data on an open air system. Now, third parties can play in that, and we can build services around them natively, but you can't anymore package personal health data and put it in the hands of a legacy proprietary tech player. That's a simple model. Then also use sort of data licensing, again, militantly for public good. Also work iteratively, start lots of different, we need to shape the market for public sector delivery using our own procurement rules to favor native companies and organizations who are working for, as this audience is, with civic tech, using open standards and open protocols, and actually stop allowing large parts of our public estate and then the commons of the public estate to be put into private hands, whereby we're asking nicely, can we use our own data? And we're paying vast amounts of license fees to use what is essentially basic technology. This stuff's not difficult. It's easy. It's knowable. It's right in front of us. It means changing procurement laws. It means favoring open standards and open protocols. We just need to do it. It is a failure of it. It's inaction. It's not particularly technologically advanced. It's simply about understanding how markets need to be shaped to provide us with the services that we want. There is a reason why in many, I'll talk about Europe now, but in many European countries, there aren't really competitive markets for what you might call the nuts and bolts of democratic service delivery, things like benefit systems, tax systems, and so on. That's because we've not shaped the market for 30 years to allow companies to grow up and provide that market. We think that buying a database will do the job, and it won't. So then we're in hock to massive sort of ERP vendors. What we need to do is stimulate our own marketplace using the things that governments have to do anyway. They have to do passports, taxis, driving licenses, all that stuff. So make brilliant services, and in the making of them, start to shape markets for suppliers who provide those services. And before you know it, you're a long way to start the move. You're a long way down the path of moving away from the dependency on big tech and legacy technology.
Thanks, Mike. Final question to Silvana. So building on your points from earlier, what would you sort of say like the most pressing like tech-related threat to democratic resilience is, and sort of the research that Barometer's come up with?
Easy. There are, I mean, in terms of promising, I'm not sure exactly what to say, but there are many things that we need to avoid, let's say. And I've been hearing about how governments or society needs to look into different sorts of models and open sources and everything. The thing is that in many cases, I think we are failing in providing the incentives for different governments and different sectors to go into those platforms. And also, I mean, thinking about all the things that we are saying, that examples that in a way, I mean, like, for example, when we are talking about how we are using tools of services, in many cases by civil society of government, how in many cases they can be turned into tools of control by the opacity and the lack of explanation that we have in terms of different tools that we are using. So there are many threats in terms of democracy, and also in thinking about the tools that we use. And one of the deeper dangers is that the people in government, the people in civil society in different areas, we are all using the same platform. So the watchdog and the people that are watched are using the same platform that is not controlled or understood in many cases by one or the other. So there are many things to do in that regard. I'm trying to think about what are the responses in a way. I mean, and we need to keep thinking, as it was mentioned before, the rule of law, thinking about the basics, building blocks in which a government or democracy works. So thinking about something so simple as data protection legislation, or different kind of regulations in data governance. Also thinking about procurement laws and legislations that help us understand what is bought and how. But also thinking about training because we are discussing how we need to change the different systems in governments, go for open source systems, and how we need to ask our government officials how things work, what they are buying and what they are not. But also we need to think that in many cases, probably in the ones that we were looking at, there's a lack of knowledge on the systems, on the procurement systems, and also on the things they are buying, the things they are implementing, the data they are using, and how this system works. So with that basic training, not only about AI system, but also thinking about data analytics and some basic ideas about how system works, it's going to be really difficult to ask government to go from this type of platforms to other ones that are even more difficult to implement, because you need an extra layer of training and knowledge. So in a way, thinking about the building blocks of any society, any democratic society, as let's say access to information, data protection, I mean, all the things that we in many cases assume or take as granted, they are not so in many cases, or at least they are on paper but not in implementation. So thinking about those basics blocks, but also thinking about the knowledge inside and out government. So not only thinking about what are the things that we can do, but thinking about the things that we are doing right now.
Thank you very much. So that takes us to the end of the time today. So just a quick thank you to our panel for their feedback there.